Here.
Vice Mayor Amsler,
Here.
Commissioner Gonzalez, Commissioner Kennedy,
Here.
Commissioner Olivera, sorry.
I think we had her.
Who's present? We have a quorum, Mayor.
Okay. All right, so let's move on to Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, public comment on the special agenda, please.
If anybody has public comment, please come to the podium. If you are on Zoom, please raise your hands. It is right next to the share, the share screen button on the bottom toolbar for Zoom.
Zoom or is it outside?
Zoom.
So I'll repeat that again. Gage Hart's on 1029 Northeast 114th Street. I'm not sure about what the goal for tonight's meeting is going to be, but I just want to reiterate the necessity for this ordinance, and I hope that we will continue moving forward on it. The planning board last month received yet more applications for development. I'm holding a plan for one. It's public record, so there's nothing on it. Where this developer is looking to build a 2-story addition on the 10-foot setback on a property that would be 23 feet high and 79 feet long of sheer one wall facing the neighbors. So this is something that the ordinance would address. So I just want to reiterate the need for this ordinance and the hope that we will continue moving forward and hopefully have some kind of something for us to work with at the end. I mean, our board does have language that we are using to try and work with this developer to bring it and make it more cohesive and more harmonious with the neighbors. So we do have some tools, but the ordinance contains items that are specifically designed for this type of situation. So I'm here for this meeting. If you have any questions, I stand available for any input you might ask. Thank you.
Thank you. You have any others?
Nothing on Zoom, sir.
Very great.
Oh, wait, I'm sorry. We do have one. Katya?
Yes.
Hi, can you please state your name and address for the record?
Sure. My name's Katya Von Elba, and I live at 1009 Northeast 118th Street. And I just don't have much to say, just except that it's just so shocking and ugly when you find these houses that are just taking up every inch of space and tiny windows, and that they're being called sugar cube houses because they just look like cubes stacked on top of each other, or dental offices. And I just feel like there's got to be another way, because I see it happening on my street. I know that I know another older home has been bought and is about to, that same thing is going to happen. And in between, sandwiched between it, is a cute little old, 1935 Biscayne Park home in between these two stacked cubic things. One of them isn't built yet, but I know it's coming. So I just speaking out, I think that if the human beings really live there that we're doing that, that's another thing. It's not. So that's the people who are deciding the buildings aren't even planning to live there in so many cases. So I also have another one on my corner. It's just literally maybe 6 or 8 feet from the fence. I mean, I'm sure they must have broken some rules because they're just taking up so much of the space. So just a voice crying out. That's a neighbor along Biscayne Park since 1983. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Katya.
Any other from Zoom?
I see none, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, great. Okay, thank you to those that made comments. So I think we'll move right into picking up the discussion for which this agenda was set, which I think was our general discussion on the amendment, and I think that was up to section 10. Is that right?
Yes, sir. You all had discussed and addressed the various sections of the ordinance. The one area that was not discussed was section 10.3. The attachment did have the updated information from the last commission meeting. And so that information is updated, except for section 10.3. Also, part of the conversation that the commission wanted to have as part of tonight, apart from any other feelings and changes with that 10.3, was to discuss dates and structure for the community workshop, to give guidance to staff in what you all wanted or how you wanted that to look like.
Okay, so let's at least start. Are we, since we, well, say since we're missing Commissioner Gonzalez, do we want to just, I guess, continue the same structure where we go through, was it 10.2.6 that we finished with, or was it 10.2 or 10.3 that we were on? I think it was 10.3. Okay. I'm looking at my notes now. I know under 10.2.6, well, that was the table after. I thought we had addressed 10.2.6 because 10.2.6 went into those subsections with the yellow highlighting for subsection 7.
And where you see in this version of the ordinance that's attached to the agenda, the text that appears in red with double underline is what was incorporated based on the comments from our last meeting on this. So it appears that at least some of 10.2.6 was addressed because those reflect some of those changes. If there's something you want to revisit, you're welcome to, but the changes that were proposed were already incorporated in that section.
So that double underlining in subsection 3 and subsection 6 would be.
Right, what appears in red, correct. So we added, for example, like in the table A, measuring from base flood elevation. Another concern was about 50% of market value. And then up on top, we added a definition for market value. So everything that appears in the red text, double underline, is the new text based on the consensus of the commission from the last time we visited this issue.
That's kind of what I thought based on the notes that I'm looking at from what I was taking. I thought we had stopped before 10.3 because there was a lot there. And actually I have that earmarked. So I think, yeah.
Valerie, a question about 10.2.6.
Yeah, of course.
She added in these comments are new from the last time, right, Valerie? The pink section out here on the right. These are notes from you.
Yes, there was an inquiry that was made about minimum dwelling size. And during that conversation, I'd indicated that I was not sure whether the Florida Building Code dictates if there's a minimum size required. So in that note, Mario had facilitated the conversation with the building official who indicated what the minimum would be based on certain criteria in the code. From the Florida Building Code.
Okay, well, this came about, I was happy to see that note in there. Thank you, Valerie. This came about because there's language in here adding, or that includes, I should say, it didn't add it, minimum dwelling size, which I questioned because I wondered why we would want to limit someone, require them to build something that bigger than they want to build when there's a whole movement towards, more environmental responsible design and less of a carbon footprint and taking up, covering less of the world with concrete generally, and the cost involved. So, and this whole, tiny house movement, small house, and people are really, a lot of people are seeking to downsize. And why we would not allow someone to do that. I know that there are financial implications for the village, but that's our problem less than theirs. At any rate, I was glad to see this in here. It's very interesting because we're proposing 1,900 in one section, that's section A along Griffing, and 1,400 elsewhere in the village. And you're telling us, Valerie, that the smallest size per Florida Building Code is less than 300 square feet is what will be required?
According to our building official.
All right, that's really interesting. So, I mean, that's a really tiny house. My shed is bigger than that. But at any rate, it's just interesting that per the building code with what you're required to have in a structure, which is, certain kinds of living spaces of certain sizes and blah, 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 really the minimum would be 280 square feet of living space. I'm not suggesting that we change the 14 or 1900 to 280 square feet, but I just sort of I was glad to see that in there. And maybe that's something that will come up in the workshops and further conversations. But I think it's worth revisiting because requiring someone to build more house than they may want, especially if they're doing it for environmental reasons or whatever their reasons are for wanting a smaller house, I think that's their business. But it doesn't negatively impact anyone. That's the thing. When we look at things that are of larger scale or proportion, or take up more of the sky because of their height and remove the voids in between spaces, then there is a negative impact on the community overall and the people who live around them. But when you're talking about something being small, I don't see that there's any negative impact at all to the community at large. In fact, it leaves the opportunity for more green space, which is a good thing. So I'm not asking us to do anything. I just wanted to point out, if you guys hadn't seen that in there, I thought that was really interesting. It was way more extreme than I thought it was going to be. So Valerie, thank you for that.
Yeah, I remember part of the discussion was Commissioner Gonzalez had mentioned, well, are we going to have somebody buy a giant plot and put a tiny little thing on it and it's going to look silly? But I know that there's my neighbors have a tiny home in another plot. It's in North Carolina, but it's a legitimate thing. So
TV shows about it.
yeah, there's plenty. It would be I would think that it's good to have this, and then this will be an item that would come up in future workshops, and we could go on to 10.3 unless anybody has any other comment on it. But it is very interesting to see it that way. Yes, I agree.
Okay, sorry, it took me a while to get connected to the Wi-Fi here.
It's on page
so-
12.
Thank you.
Yeah.
12,
There it is.
yes,
Down there at the bottom is what we're referring
Got it.
to.
we're good. So where are we picking up?
We'd be picking up at 10.3, which immediately follows this, following the diagrams on 14, 15, and 16 and 17. 10.3. Gosh, keep it down, Veronica.
Sorry, guys. I'm in a hotel lobby in Helsinki at 12:17 a.m. So
That's just impressive.
it just might be a little ruckus around here.
That's where we should be. Whoever's running this, yeah, right in there.
This one. I think the first change under 10.3 is what, 10.3.2, the deletion of the rooftop air conditioning ductwork being screened.
This is correct. So what we discussed, this is Alex David, sorry. I'm zooming in from I guess the South Miami version of the log cabin, except this, the Sylvan Martin building in South Miami is a Coral Rock building, but it's also historic, built in 1935. So anyway, just wanted to give you a little context. I'm here for their commission meeting. So, but anyway, as Valerie said, everything in red, we've taken care of everything up to this point, and dealing with the 0.2C, we are proposing to end the sentence after "on any roof," period. So we would delete from ground or first level or the first level. So it would be just "on any roof."
So Alex, I appreciate your background on that. I think we were going to back up quickly to 10.3.1, if you wouldn't mind.
Oh, okay.
Thank you. Okay, so let's look at that. Look at the first one. Is there anything anyone wants to discuss about 10.3.1?
Yeah, I do, if I may. So this is the harmonious clause of our code that is what P and Z uses often to try to, accomplish what we want to accomplish while we work on this thing. And this is something that we are recommending that would stay in the code. And it says that, basically says, everything has to be harmonious with the other buildings in the area. It's the in the area part that has always been a challenge to me. Biscayne Park is only 3/4 of 1 square mile. we're the size of a neighborhood for many cities, right? So in an area, Biscayne Park is the area as far as I'm concerned. And to say that something is harmonious in this part of the village, but not in another part of the village, seems a little peculiar to me when the village is just so tiny. It would seem to me that if we're trying to create, a community, we're trying to sort of give the framework for community standards here, that everything should apply everywhere. I'd hate for any one part of the village to be seen as better, worse, worth more, don't care so much about, or a mistake was already made over there in that part of the village. So now someone could say, yeah, but it's harmonious with that other place. So I don't know. I like things to be very nicely, tightly defined. This is very nebulous to me, in the area. I don't know what in the area means. You're building a house on 114th Street, what's the area? That block, the streets behind it, anything you can see from the end of the median, but 2 blocks away is something completely different. It just seems very vague to me. I would rather it just be, things have to harmonize in Biscayne Park altogether.
I think that makes perfect sense to me. I don't know if I would read into any portion of this that if it has to harmonize, including exterior color, characters, appearance, style, etc., if that precludes anything specific. I don't know if that I'm maybe reading.
It's very general and meant to be rather broad in that regard. And broad in its content is one thing, but broad in its scope is something different to me.
I don't see an issue with the area, to be honest with you. As I read it, I understand it's talking about the village. I don't specifically associate it within certain amounts of blocks around us. I understand this, it's inclusive of our village.
But that's how it's being used, is not inclusive of the village. What I'm saying is it is being used in a much more local way.
Okay.
It's inclusive, it's harmonious with that house right there on the other side of the street, but
Within
someone.
the block. So when P&Z is reviewing, in this case, Gage, you guys are getting, I'm sorry, can we interact this way?
Yeah, I
right?
think he needs to hop up there.
Yeah,
If you're being very formal, I know historically the village has not, you would ask through the mayor to address something.
yes, I know. I go ahead. Oh, please.
Thank you, Gage. This is great to have you, and I appreciate your feedback, experience feedback in this. So when it comes to the harmonious, see that this is interesting because I wouldn't have read that is within a specific area. I rather thought this, it was inclusive of the village.
It's kind of both, actually. I mean, it's really, other bit, like, let's just say exterior colors, if you have a house, if you have a block full of white houses and somebody wants to paint the house bright orange, we're going to look at it and go, okay, it doesn't really harmonize with the area. But if you have a block with only 1-story houses, the code in our village allows 2-story houses. So we look at then the broader village and say, okay, we can allow a 2-story house on this one block that only has 1 stories. So, I mean, if we wanted to, just to interpret it as just the block, we would say, okay, this street doesn't have any 2-story houses. So we're not going to build any 2-story houses on this street, but we look at the broader sense that the village allows 2-story houses. So it's kind of this is probably one of the most important sentences in our code that the board uses. The harmonize and blend in is very important because of, the way it can be interpreted to help our goals. Now, so that's the answer to the question. The area kind of goes both ways. I mean,
But has it represented an issue where people come and say, well, you said it says area, so because of that, I will fight you for what you're standing, because in the village and the other area, I saw something similar to what I'm trying to build.
I've never had we've never had somebody challenge us on the word in the area.
Okay, so I think that's what I was going, because it is very broad in itself, I think that's the purpose. It allows you for it. So I don't I don't see, and that's what was my point, the need of changing this specifically when it talks about area versus village is because it has allowed us to have that discussion on a broader way, and you are able to use or use it in the best way you see.
Well, let's flip that around and ask the same thing a different way.
Sure.
In the case of a two-story building, you couldn't say no to someone who wants a two-story building on a street with only one-story houses because our code allows it. You couldn't say that, right? You couldn't say, I'm going to pull out the
Legally, no.
harmonious card and say you can't build a two-story house because this whole block is one story. You couldn't say that.
No, we
Our
couldn't.
code, okay, but that you would get challenged on and lose because our code specifically allows for two-story
But we could
houses.
say, put the 2 stories in the back of the house. You know,
Okay, but you
would-
couldn't say no to a
make
two-story
the
house.
front facades more harmonious with the other single-story houses
That's
around it.
that's a different topic. Now, but let me ask this. I think I've been in meetings where it's come up this way, where you guys, I'm not criticizing you guys at all. God knows. So, but it has come up the other way where people want something and you tell them no, because it's not harmonious with something in that area on that block, but it is, they could give you examples of elsewhere in the village where it does exist.
Mhm.
That's what I'm saying, Veronica.
But that's the
So-
entire point of something harmonizing with
So,
the.
so
with the
people
things
have been
around it.
people have been told no because it doesn't exist on this block. But walk a block that way and there's one right there.
But I just asked the question, and the answer was no. There hasn't been examples where in the past that has been an issue.
In the area. Yeah, we haven't really been challenged
house.
on the area.
Okay. Thank you.
Like the style of houses is a perfect example, like the modern houses where there isn't one in that area. But there are elsewhere.
And that's an example of something where, we look at the broader village and go, the village is made up of all these different architectural styles. So there isn't a sugar cube on 114th Street, but because it is something that's an architectural style within the village, we do allow it.
What I'm saying is this, it is used in a very defined way. And I think Biscayne Park is so small that if something's going to be a yes or a no, it should be a yes or a no for Biscayne Park, not for a certain block or a certain street or a certain cul-de-sac or whatever the case.
I don't see the issue. That's all I'm stating.
Do we have any, Madam Attorney, would it be of any legal consequence if we were to say the other buildings in the area within the confines of Biscayne Park? Or would that only further muddy the waters from your perspective?
It's whatever the consensus of the commission is. It can be amended if there's consensus to put within the jurisdictional boundaries of the village versus the area. The alternative I've seen, compatible with adjacent properties, you can define what that area is. Typically, this is a very small community, but I've also seen kind of compatible with those in the zoning district, something like that, but that's for a bigger jurisdiction. So it's whatever, is the will of the commission.
I like that the language here allows Gage and the planning board to, have a broader brush to paint with, so to speak, with each application. I like the language as it is.
And then I'm looking at it from, and as much as I'm the one who wants to try to get tighter restrictions in here, in some regards, this is an example of when I'm looking at it from the perspective of a resident who would be told no to something when someone 2 blocks away was told yes to it. That's my point. So somebody says, I want to do this, and they're told no because not in that area. But there's one right over there on 118th Street. And there's another one over there, and there's 3 over there on that cul-de-sac. Yeah, but that's there and this is here. It's like, okay, so where do you draw the line? We're Little Biscayne Park.
Yeah, I know, but I think that again, that's where we rely on PNC in this case. This is what's been happening, and then the language that it has allowed you to say yes to one and maybe no to the other. And that's where their experience and expertise, and them agreeing on which one is right at that time. Maybe it's a no for one and a yes to another, based on every case that you are brought.
And here's where I'm going to play devil's advocate, Veronica, just because we need to look at every angle on this. I have the ultimate confidence in Gage and his board. Now I'm going to project 3 years ahead from now when none of us are sitting here. and new people have been appointed and who knows what their credentials are. And now they have this very broad language that could be used in ways that we can't even imagine. That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
So it's like, I'm not worried about the now. Now I'm totally cool. You could leave it here. You could let them pick it. They did something last night at a meeting where they let someone off menu with a color selection. I trust them. I don't know what's going to happen in the board after this one and the board after that one and 5 years from now and 10 years from now and 15 years from now. And that's what I'm worried about is what if?
Yeah, but again, I think we all have a term, a certain amount of years we're gonna be here to provide, kind of to bring these issues that we currently see at the code as they apply now. We don't know what's gonna happen in 10 years, to your point. And again, I'm trying to see it from the perspective of not trying to fix something that it's not broken in this case.
And I worry about something that will break.
Yeah.
So maybe it's not, I'm not worried that it's broken now. I'm not suggesting that in the very least. I'm worrying that it could break. And all it takes is the same way we get 3 of us say yes to something and it happens. 3 of them say yes to something and it happens. The code board, 3 of them say yes to something and it happens.
Mhm.
It doesn't have to be a board of 5 people all think it was the best idea. 3 of them say it and it happens. That's why I'm like, I worry about the what ifs.
I get it.
I don't know that there's anything that we can do that would time-proof this type of thing. So
Take out the words in the area.
the other buildings will harmonize and blend in with the other buildings.
Like that. And that still gives them flexibility to interpret that. They still have the ability to interpret, but it doesn't make it so specific to a tight area.
Well, if we think about it, if we were to change it to say within the village, would that create an issue with kind of the first part of what you were talking about, Commissioner Amsler, Vice Mayor Amsler?
No, I don't think the whole point of the meeting today was to go sentence by sentence on the entire portion of the code to see, again, looking in the future, what things could be avoided now. I think, again, there are certain highlights and recommendations that were already addressed that I think we need to focus on, because I think we're going very, very thin into the wording in this case. And again, it hasn't been an issue before, PNC supports it. I say we move forward and go to the things that really.
With all due respect, I mean, we are here to do this job.
Correct.
So we're here, the words are in front of us. We're not limited to discussing something that somebody underlined.
I know, but we did start, there are certain already points added or deleted or, that are brought for discussion. There's other parts that had, they still remain the same. We did this on the previous commission meeting where we went through everything that was underlined as included, new or deleted. And I think that was the whole point of addressing those changes we all wanted to see discussed.
So if I may, to step aside from this for just 1 second, I do see that we're already after 5:30, so we're probably not gonna have enough time. I don't want to detract from the discussion because I do think it's important. So I think that within the area, I think at least the way that it's being interpreted so far, I think it's adequate and it's been working. There are a lot of other things that I'd like to look at, especially the second page. Orientation and frontage placement is pretty big. Again, I don't want to take away from this, but I think that we do need to move on, and I think in the area is working sufficiently well enough to say that it's not creating any issues. So I don't know what we would do. Do we have to vote? Do we have to just agree?
No, I mean, it's clear that there's at least 3, there's consensus to leave it as is. So
Okay.
just continue to the next comment.
All right. Well, I do very much appreciate everyone's input on this, and I think it's an important discussion. I'm glad we're having it. But I think that in the area is sufficient enough that we're not experiencing any problems with it. So I think I'd really like to try and look at a lot of the other things that we're here for, because we do also have to talk about dates and format for the workshop on these things, which I'm sure that'll take some time too. So I think that in the area works. Are there any other discussion points before we get on to the next part, or try to come back to 10.3.2C before we get to there? Did anyone want to talk about any of the other provisions before we get to that provision? Okay, not hearing any. So let's take a look at that deletion for C. I know that Alex already briefly discussed it for us. Was there any specific concern with that one before we get on to 10.3.3?
Yeah, so this is 10.3 is, the sun is killing my computer here. So 10.3,
Looking that way and I'm getting like a blinding thing too.
10.3.2C is what Alex was talking about. And he said, put a period after roof, shall be visible from any, nothing will be visible on any roof. Does that mean, Alex, that it has to be positioned such that in itself it cannot be visible? Or would that allow someone to build those, I forget what you guys call them, when they build walls around things on roofs to block them?
It
So
could be.
would it allow for both or either?
Well, it could be screening, some type of screening, or a parapet, but it's not around the whole roof. It's around your AC or whatever is up there, your ductwork.
Right.
So it would be
So I want to
very
make sure
limited.
that's clear. Are
Right.
we saying it can't be visible because it's not in a place where it's visible from the ground, or it can't be visible because you build a wall around it, or you put a covering or a screen around it? Those are two very different things. Because then
Right.
that screen becomes part of the architecture of the house.
Right, but if it's set back, as I said, we're not envisioning that to be at the walls of the facades of the building. It would be, limited to the area around any ductwork. And so I think the reason for the change is if there is a second story or a two-story house next door, do you really, want to look out your window from the second floor and see ductwork? So I think we need to take some care with screening it, not just from the street level, but from a second level.
Right. So again, my question is, what is the intent here? To have them position it in a place where it's not visible, or to have them cover it up so it's not visible, but instead a screen is? We
What,
want to see the screens is my point. I'm looking at a house right here at the other end of this cul-de-sac where I'm looking at one. So you can see it from the street. And this would prevent that from happening. But do we want to, if they put a wall around it, would that satisfy this portion of the code? Then we'd be looking at the screen, the wall up on the roof. Do we want to see that?
I
I
mean,
don't think so.
Well, we discussed this at the planning board, and it was more screening. I mean, that's what we typically call it, screening, not a parapet.
My point is, do
Again,
we
I
want to
think it's
see that?
design. I'm sorry?
Do we want to see that? Is the point to have this thing be gone, be put on the ground, to be put somewhere else where it's not visible, or to cover it up with something else that we see instead?
Well, I mean, a lot of the ductwork that is there is because it was, a house was retrofitted. If it was a flat roof, mid-century or whatever, there was no attic space for ductwork. I mean, that's one of the reasons you see it on the roof. So hopefully, when someone's building a new house, it's either on the ground or set back on the roof, which it can be. So, I mean, we just call it screening. I'm not envisioning a wall, but it could be a small wall.
I'm
Sorry,
interpreting this.
I got lost there. Can I ask you a question? Sorry about that. So we're saying we don't want to see air conditioning duct from the first level
When they put them up on the roof.
when they put them up on the roof.
Right, when they
So-
put them up on the roof.
So if I am from the neighbor and I look over the balcony and I see, that's what we don't want. We don't want to see your AC from my balcony.
From anywhere.
So
So
if I have it on
you can
my
enclose
first
it.
level, if I have it in the floor in the first level, and it's behind my house, right? My neighbor can look over their balcony and see my AC on the floor.
Yes.
It's within code
This
right
is
now.
roof conversation.
Okay, so it has to be on the roof. That's what I'm saying.
No, it doesn't have to be. What I'm saying,
No.
Okay.
this section is about things
Okay,
on a roof.
okay.
Right, and if you go around, as I said, if you go around the village, you'll see some houses that have this ductwork
Yeah.
on the roof. So, and that
Yes.
was because of, like I said, there's just no attic space to put in ductwork in the ceiling. So in the whatever 60s, 70s, whenever they put in AC, that's what they did.
Sure.
But newer
So
construction, they're doing it too. I'm looking at the newer construction right here down the street, and that house is only 3 years old. It was put.
is it units?
I know, but I'm saying it is, that's a code problem down there, I know. But separate from that, you're right, but separate from that, that's what this is about. It would prevent that from happening.
Right, to the greatest extent possible. I mean, that's the idea. We really don't want to see ductwork or AC units from, especially if you're on the street, looking back into the house.
And my question again is, maybe I'm not saying it clearly, that yes, but do we also want to not see the screen that's covering them up? We want to see the screen attached to the roof that's covering this thing up. So you're not seeing an air conditioning unit up there, but you're seeing an ugly screen that's covering it up. That's my point.
It would be a screen covering it. You would not be seeing the actual unit, but you'd have some type of screening to shield it from view.
That's, yes, and my question is, do we want to also not see that screening? I'm asking a question, that's all.
So
I'll
what,
say that I'm fine with seeing the screening. To me, 10.3.2C is saying we don't want to see any roofs. And so you either need to have it placed where it cannot be seen from the street, or you need to enclose it. And that is the common practice that folks do, right? They enclose it. So you're really just looking at, like he's saying a screen, but to me, it kind of looks like a low wall, the same way you enclose your garbage bins, so that, that you're not just looking at people's garbage bins on the side of the house. You put it in some type of enclosure, and that just becomes, part of the home. And
You're right, Veronica.
that's how
what
I'm
meant.
interpreting it. Yeah, that's how I'm interpreting that. It's
Right, and I mean, if it's a trellis or something open, that's lattice work, but if it's a solid wall, if I'm not, this is not my business, but I know if you have to have like, open air around
Right.
any of these HVACs or certain distances have to have open so the air goes through. So I don't know what that is, but I know it has to happen. So, that's basically all I could say about that one. I think we're trying to shield how it's shielded is possibly up to the Planning and Design Review Board, and then also by code, if they choose to put a small wall or something around it, again, there's that separation.
And again, this is where, when we're looking at code, I'm always thinking, what's the worst legal application of this code that someone could say, well, I followed the code, and now you're looking up at a roof where there's an air conditioner. And like right now, if we cited that house and they were following this code, and they went up and put some ugly plastic thing up there, they could say, well, you can't see it now. Now it's shielded. Now you're not seeing the AC unit, but do we want to see the solution to blocking that? Is that something any more that we want to see? That's what I'm saying. I'm not advocating for anything. I'm just pointing out that you have to look at the language that's here. It says, no AC or other ductwork shall be visible on the roof.
I mean, I think that's,
Put them on the ground. Most houses are on the
yeah,
ground.
I mean, I think that's the solution, but you're
Or the
right.
ductwork, right, that's different, yeah.
Right, the ductwork's different from the HVAC units. So, I mean, I think this is where the design review board comes in. If they propose something that is not harmonious with the community or doesn't look good architecturally, that's where your design review board comes in.
I did it one time, an old house that didn't have a central AC, and I put it in, and I did it all from the inside and then softened everything in, so you didn't even know it was there. I didn't put it up on the roof. The last thing I wanted was ugly
Right.
ductwork on my roof. I did it all inside. Had a drywall guy come in, softened it in, it was gone. So there are other interior solutions. So again, to you guys, I'm just bringing up and playing devil's advocate here. Do we want to see that any more than we want to see the AC unit? Because it's not clear here. It says you can't see the AC, but it doesn't say you can't see the other ugly things that could be ugly that we don't want to see. That's this.
think
I'm
that's what
fine with this language
situation-
and leaving it to the planning board to look at the plans. I think contractors have, sort of how they manage this issue. It's a fairly common issue. And I feel comfortable leaving it with the planning board.
I don't know if there's anything that we could do to guarantee that if you're gonna put something on the roof, if it's allowed on the roof, I don't know, and that you can guarantee that you're never gonna be able to see it. So I think in that situation, it has to be screened. I don't know how realistic it is if how someone's gonna cover that, but
And look, and talking about, they chose to put it up there. They didn't have to put that on the roof. They chose to put it up on the roof. And now it's in plain view. It's a code violation, Gage is right, but it should have been dealt with when the building went up, but it wasn't. That's what I'm saying is the solution may not be any better than what we're trying to solve. When it's done and it's up and you're taking a walk and you look up, this is written in such a way that it may not be any better.
So
You're
are
looking
we
at something you
leaving
don't
it?
want to see.
Then why are we changing it? So no air conditioner ductwork shall be visible from, it was originally on the ground and we switch it to the first level.
No, it's where it's visible from.
Yeah. So any roof from ground versus the first level.
And then it was changed because we didn't want people to have to see it from their house, from inside their house either. So we took the ground, and this came from the board, didn't it, Gage? This came from the planning board.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, that they removed the whole notion of where you're viewing it from, that's not the limiting factor, that we don't want to see it from anywhere, inside the house next door, this house behind, the street in front. They removed where you're standing when you're seeing it.
Yeah.
And just the fact that you're seeing it at all, which I'm totally good with. And I'm just worried about what someone could do that we wouldn't like any better. You could say no air conditioning or other ductwork or screening for those things shall be visible on any roof. You could, and then they have to position it in a place that is not visible or put it on the ground or something from anywhere. Yeah.
and then wouldn't we be
That's what I'm
changing,
saying. If you read what was stricken, that's what they took out.
and wouldn't we be changing this to basically say that no air conditioning or ductwork shall be placed on the roof?
That
there are
is
plenty of houses
effectively
you-
what that would do.
Well,
So I'm wondering if we can even
No.
do that.
there are houses that you could put them on roofs that you wouldn't see, nobody would see them. It depends on where on the roof they're put. If they're out towards the edge, like this one is, it's very visible. You put it in the center of the house somewhere, especially on the larger houses, then it's not visible. But, yeah, so they took out the ground and first level thing and Alex is saying ended after the word roof. So another solution would be no air conditioning, ductwork, or the screening thereof shall be visible from any roof.
They were to do something like a wall, something more tasteful, something part of the house, then that would preclude them from doing that too.
Sorry?
If someone wanted to put up a wall, something that matched the rest of the exterior of the
If it was part of
home,
The architecture of the home, then absolutely. And for new construction, they could plan for that. Because they often have, the walls that are up there as part of the architecture and that can hide all kinds of stuff. And Alex is saying that he's right. And Alex is saying they want to end it after their conversation with you, end it after the word roof, period. Take the rest out. It's not what you're seeing online, but that's what he's saying.
Yes.
Right. And now Alex is saying the first thing he started with was put a period after the word roof. Isn't that correct, Alex?
Yes, that was based on the conversation on the 20th of December.
what about this? What if we said no air conditioning or other ductwork or screening not in compliance with 10.3.1 shall be visible on any roof or any roof, period. So that would preclude someone from throwing a chain link fence up there because it's not harmonious in blending with the exterior of the home.
And I think if we just add the word screening on there somewhere as one of the things you don't want to see, it kind of solves it.
Well, why don't we just say no air conditioning, comma, other ductwork or screening shall be visible on any roof?
That's what I'm saying.
So, okay. So no AC, other ductwork or screening shall be visible on any roof.
Oh, it just can't be visible. We can allow it. Plenty.
Right, we're allowing it, it's just, we don't want it to be visible.
That was my point. Or yeah, from a neighbor that is close by.
It's 2-7.
That would be interesting.
Do they enclose them?
Well, a lot of well, not on new construction necessarily. No, not even on existing houses. You're right. It's flat roofed. It's a flat roof topic. 'Cause most of these gabled roof houses, you couldn't do it anyway.
Right.
But well, saying here's the other thing. It's like they can see it or they can't see it. But if someone then builds the neighbors next door tear their house down and build a two-story house, now they can see it, but they've put themselves in the position of seeing it.
Right.
It wasn't visible before, but now, and we're not going to go back to that air conditioner owner and say, well, the house next door can see it now that they put a two-story. That's on them at that point.
Oh, but they could come and say, okay, I want to enforce the existing code. I actually am looking at a roof from my roof.
But when it was permitted and done and approved, it passed the code at that time.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
So just to clarify, so the new language that will be proposed for second reading will be no air conditioning, comma, other ductwork or screening shall be visible from any roof.
That's simple to me.
Visible on any roof, not from any roof, right?
Well, on any,
On any roof.
the from all got removed.
Hmm.
Doesn't matter what you're.
I'm sorry?
I was just restating what.
I think I would be fine with that. Before we move on, I don't know if we have any other comment on that change that we're talking about, but we are under 10 minutes. And we have a whole lot left here to do, which we're not going to get to because we're running into the regular commission meeting. So I think what I would propose at this time is I think we have to set a date for a date and a procedure for a workshop on this. And I think everything else forward, I think we're just going to have to take up at the workshop. Otherwise, we're going to have to set another special agenda to continue to go through this. And it's only going to put off the workshop, and I really don't want to keep doing that. So I would propose at this time that we're okay with the language for 10.32C, and we talk very quickly about dates and process or procedure for a workshop to talk about everything, including what we haven't got to. Sound good? Okay.
Perfect.
So what do we think about, I guess we have to talk about the procedure first because that might dictate when we can do this. How do we foresee this procedure working as kind of an open forum for discussion on the items?
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Yes.
So I think it's going to be prudent, and I understand that the commission, based on our last conversation, wanted to have as much interaction with the public as possible during this workshop. But I think it's prudent that we need to have some kind of presentation of where we stand with the ordinance to the public.
Okay.
And with that, I had asked Alex to provide some hours and rates because it would be beyond the scope of what his project entailed. Alex, I know you were taking a last minute look at that. Could you share with us the amount of hours and what the estimated cost would be?
Well, I was kind of waiting to hear how we were going to approach it today, but typically, it would take at least two staff members. I see, blowing up what we're talking about, putting on board so everyone sees in front of them what we're doing. That's an expense. I'm looking at probably $3,000 or $4,000. That's the ballpark based on noticing and putting graphics together and photographs and blowing up the boards and doing a nice presentation. That would be the general range for like a Saturday, several hours. It's not just going to the meeting, it's prepping for the meeting.
And then after.
Okay, so all in, Alex, we'd be looking at about 3,000 to 4,000 ballpark for your involvement, or for your group's
Yeah,
involvement.
basically, with two staff members and all the background and like I said, every board is, a cost, everything we put together and, I have the ideas and we need graphics and we need, I think what I wanted to do, and I shared this with a manager, I think we need to compile photographs of what we're actually talking about, the good, the bad, the ugly, like we did
We did before.
what, 14 months ago, December of 21, I guess. It was kind of like that, but with more photos showing, examples of what we're talking about. So we need to compile that and then just, the PowerPoints and blowing up the onto boards, other graphics and just whatever material we need to get out to the residents would have to be done. And we were thinking about maybe a Saturday afternoon or late morning or something in there, a couple hours. If that's the will of the commission, handling it that way. So it's not as stressful and people, it's a Saturday so they can come out and not try to rush there after work or something. So I could refine the proposal and get back to the manager on that.
Okay, well, I don't want this to wait until another meeting, so I think we probably need to make a decision on when this is now, so we can get it in the books, unless we foresee this going either past March, so it can come up again at the March meeting. How far out are we looking at dates? Do we know? I guess, Alex, what would be your availability?
Well,
Close.
unfortunately, the next 3 weekends, I'm either out of town or committed for other clients. One is another Saturday meeting. But I think I was looking at the first weekend of March. I mean, it sounds like a long time, but it's really not. It's 3.5 weeks.
March 4th?
That was my thought, based on what happens tonight.
Okay, so my question then to everyone here would be, do we think that's enough time to get word out to the community that we have this coming up on the 4th and that we need everyone there because this is the opportunity to talk about it?
Right, and then after that, I'm good. February is bad, March is fine. So, if we decide to do it on a Saturday, I'm good.
I think March 4th, Saturday, 11 a.m. to 2 p.m., snacks and, a Slido so that people can ask questions, anonymously if they need to, if we can have some sort of, time that we select for open dialogue. Maybe we do the presentation, hold questions, have a Q&A for an hour, giving people plenty of time to, view the presentation, develop their questions, so that they're not answered within the presentation, right? If we go in some sort of order like that, I think we may come away with a lot more in common than we thought going into it.
I just got a question quick. Is it a smart idea to go and do this without having a firm understanding of exactly what it is that we kind of agree to before we go into this? Because we're going to go in there and there's a lot of things that are still, unless you guys only got to 10.33, there's a lot of stuff that we still need to go over and kind of get an idea of what it is that we want to do or we think is the right thing. Is it smart to go into this without having that perspective before we meet?
When's the, when's the March regular commission meeting? Do we know the date?
March
7th?
7th.
March 7? The other thing that I would really want out of this would be like an agenda of what we want to accomplish from the people. So it would probably be prudent to have a little bit more time to talk about it.
I don't
So
think I'll be there in 3.
the 4th might be a little too soon. What about the rest of March, Alex? You said the rest of March is.
I'm
Are
good
you okay?
until the very end of March. I'm out of town that last weekend, for the planning conference, the National Planning Conference. So I think that's actually April 1st, but the other couple weekends I'm fine.
Okay, so we would have the 11th, the 18th, and the 25th.
For what it's
Yes.
worth, I don't know if this considers into anybody's scheduling, but a lot of people go out of town during spring break. And spring break for Miami-Dade Public Schools is the week of the 20th.
Week of the 20th. Okay,
Yeah,
so
March
that's
20th.
So
Just
the 18th.
consideration, because I don't want you to schedule it and people say, oh, everybody's out of town, you get kind of that feedback. So just be mindful of that.
Okay. So that would pretty much leave the 11th, which follows our regular commission agenda or regular commission meeting, which would at least allow us to try and get through some more of this before we get to the 11th. What if we tentatively put it down for the 11th and we try to tie up any of the loose ends that we have on the 7th? Is that enough time in between the 7th and the 11th, do we think, to do that?
For Alex and I think we could incorporate the language changes into the body of the ordinance in a couple of days. That's not a problem.
Okay, that's good.
That's not a problem at all. Yeah.
Okay, that's good. So we have that. Now, with the commission, what do we think? Is that enough time between the 7th to try and talk about the rest of this and set an agenda between then and the 11th to really do that?
Yeah, and I think that's what needs to happen. I mean, I don't know if we're going to make it for the 7th, but we have to have a clear agenda. I don't know, today was an hour. We didn't go forward much. So Mario, to your perspective, is it, or Alex in this case, can we have a proposal on how best accomplish feedback on how would you suggest this agenda looks like so that we discuss it on the 7th? Since we can't have a conversation about what this agenda is going to look like until then, maybe bring in something to the 7th that we have in front of us for discussion would make the start point at least clear.
Yeah, I mean, that may be cutting it close in case you have major changes, but I mean, we could bring something before you and then because at that point, I'll probably have to be making the material.
No, Alex, she's talking about the structure of the meeting itself
Oh.
and receiving feedback.
Correct.
What kind of structure we would do that to receive the community
okay.
feedback?
What the recommendation would be. So basically, here's the latest document that we have, a clean version of it. And then this is what's pending for discussion. This is the items we would like to hear from the community. This is in the format in which we propose to do it. This is the time allocated for each. But I'm saying bring in either you guys, I don't know how we would work it around, but have something presented to the commission on the 7th. So we have a start point for conversation and we can tweak whatever is needed to then share it with the community. The problem is we're not going to have much time to advertise this
Right.
and promote it.
now.
And I know, but I'm saying to
I-
give people in
Yeah.
order to digest it and know what they're coming for.
Alex might have, well, not might, Alex has a lot more experience in this realm than I do. I've really been a part of meetings that have essentially two structures. One is a charrette, which
Yeah.
is more informal. You have different stations and people just travel from station to station and there's no formal presentation. You have various pictures and boards that explain what is going on and different staff that explains that individual station. People give their feedback, notes are taken, and then everything's compiled. And then there is this format. A presentation is given, people see what it's done, then they come up to the mic, they talk, we take notes, we answer a question or two, and that's basically it. So I don't know if Alex has a different type of format that might be some type of hybrid or something, but I don't know of a way where you can essentially explain the entire ordinance because it's a heavy, complicated
Correct.
aspect, and then take feedback from everybody. And then we would definitely have to have, essentially rules of, last time we held this workshop, we never limited how many times people can come and give comments. But then there was a moment where one person comes up, says one thing, another resident comes up, disagrees, and then that person comes back and they're
Yeah.
kind of debating each other. And so it all depends on what the commission wants to kind of achieve and how
Yeah.
they want to do that. One is going to allow more of a formal presentation and receive feedback.
A
and
discussion,
colloquial-
basically.
Right? And the other is just there's stuff all around the room, go and talk to whoever's there and have your conversation with one or the other. Others will hear that conversation and then jump in or whatnot. There's no formal presentation or way to receive that feedback. It's up to staff to be taking those notes.
Right, and I like what Mario said. It is, I'm visualizing kind of a hybrid. You know, you have a presentation, but the boards, and it's very informal. People walk around, ask questions, and try to, and then we, call the comments into a document, so you have that for your information. And so I think in my mind, it's a hybrid.
I feel the feedback received on that open, there was already a discussion that happened on this, Alex, right? And then there was an open conversation. It wasn't an open discussion, but it were the opportunity for public comments where people came and talk about the presentation that was given. That was the first time it was presented, correct?
December, like 14 months ago, in December, it's been a while, 21, yeah, December of 21.
And so the feedback to that meeting is that people wanted to have more of a discussion and a conversation instead of just standing up, using the 3 minutes, sitting down, because then to Mario's point, then it starts piling up different comments that might be on different sections. It becomes very disorganized. So again, I think we need to, we're close on time right now to finalize in this, but if we maybe, I would suggest proposing, Alex, to you, from your experience, another format that it allows for an open discussion on the items we still have to revise. And then, let's bring it on the 7th and make space for us to look how to adapt that, when is the best day to do it moving forward.
Okay, yeah, I mean, that would be my focus. Let's, this whole, the workshop or whatever we're calling it, I mean, we need to focus on 10.3. I mean, that's,
Yes.
everything else is, wordsmithing, we've changed definitions, that, I think, we've done a good job in cleaning that up, but, I think I would have on a board the actual development standards and then 10.3, just go through and see, those are two graphics that I would have immediately. These are the changes, and then we go from there, have the pretty pictures and some other things, and then, we go from there.
So we'll try to work out a little bit more of a format so that on your March 7th commission meeting, you guys can take that into consideration.
Perfect.
Right, it'll be a detailed, like a layout of an agenda and a detailed scope of what we're doing on the Saturday.
Right, so then, but I want to be clear now, very quickly. The 11th is the date that we are working for, correct? Because if we're going to start telling residents now, I want them to know that this is the date and this is the date we're working towards, and we want them to be involved.
Yep.
And we're giving a
Right.
month
Just-
notice, so that's wonderful. A 4-week notice is great. We
Yep.
would be able to give that as of right now.
Okay.
Thank you,
does-
Alex, so much.
No
Thanks,
problem.
Alex.
Thank you.
Or how do we feel about that? We're gonna have Alex put together a proposal for what the agenda is going to look like on how to present this and discuss it with residents and we're gonna take a look at that on the 7th at our regular commission meeting. But in the date that we are setting now for that workshop with the residents is the 11th, the Saturday, the 11th, because the next 2 Saturdays are spring break. So effectively, we'd be pushing this all the way into April.
And are we authorizing expenditure of funds for this meeting? And is there an upper limit to that so that we can work?
Do that too.
Okay, just to be clear, our planning board chair, Gage Hartung, is not available on the 11th. And I'm not comfortable having this discussion without Gage being in the room.
Have to push to April.
And since I'm talking, I'm just going to say now, I'm going to repeat that I don't think we need to have another workshop. We did this for 22 months now. We've been doing it. We had a workshop, multiple commission meetings. We sat here and the topic came up several times in different forms and fashions. And lots of board discussions with it as well. And Lord knows I met with a lot of people in this village in the past 22 months. So I'm going to go along with whatever you guys say you want to do, clearly, and I'll be there whenever you tell me to be there. I hope that some more substance comes out of it. I hope it's worth all this money and added time. I don't want to do it if Gage isn't there.
So April 1st, Saturday, April 1st?
I'm out of town.
Okay,
Then we're in April 8th.
Saturday, April 8th?
Are there holidays in there or no? I don't.
Hmm.
We might have to.
Easter's April 9th.
Yeah, that's Easter weekend.
Yeah,
We're not
Easter.
gonna- We're not gonna pick a
Right.
day
No,
and a time
and no.
that's convenient for everyone.
No.
We need to get the players here, and there will be residents who can't come for whatever reason. It's bedtime for kids, Saturdays, they're busy running kids around to how many different events. You're not gonna find a time that's perfect, so I think we need to just pick a time that everyone's available here and do our best to get people there.
Right.
You know, I understand that we got spring break in March, but I don't want to
That's
push this all the way into
21st.
April. I don't want to push it all the way into April either.
Okay.
How do we look on the 25th?
May I make a suggestion?
Sure.
Just in the interest of time.
Time,
sensitivity?
you know,
It's almost 6:15 and we have a meeting that was supposed to start at 6 o'clock. And there are residents here that came to speak during public comment and they want to hear things that they came to hear for this meeting. Might we commit to, at the end of this meeting that we have, revisit this conversation and figure out dates, but get our next meeting started?
I'd be fine with that. I really don't want to continue to push this any further right now, so we can get started. Anybody else?
Okay.
Okay,
All good.
all right. Okay, so we'll do that. So we're adjourned, I think. A motion to adjourn on this special commission.
Second.
Adjourn.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Just let me know what's
Thank
going
you,
on.
Alex. Yep, I'll reach out
Okay,
to you.
bye.
Thanks, Alex.
Take
Thank you, Alex.
Okay. Okay, 2 minutes. Go ahead.